This is Palisade Radio. This is your host, Colin Cattell. On the line with us today is a new guest to the program, John McCoach. John is the president of the Venture Exchange. John, welcome to the program.
My pleasure. Thanks, Colin.
We got in touch recently based on a chart that Palisade Research had just published showing the bears and bulls of the TSX Venture Exchange. You're the president of the exchange and know firsthand just how bad things have been for investors over the past 3 years. What can you say about the general state of the resource sector today?
Well, there's no question it's challenging, particularly for early stage exploration companies. Having said that, there's a number of companies that are still doing very well, even in the natural resource sector. That it's not across the board.
Further to that point, I pulled up a statistic, and today mining, including oil and gas companies, constitute 71% of the venture exchange by listings, but only 52% by market cap. Contrast that with 2011, when those same companies represented 69% of listings, but 81% of the market caps. And that's a drastic change. How reliant is the venture exchange on the resource sector today?
Well, of course, the market in 2011 was very different than the market we're experiencing today. Commodity prices were significantly higher, both in oil and gas and precious metals, base metals were all considerably higher. And so not surprising that the percentage of the market cap in the natural resource sector has gone down, but also we're seeing very positive signs in non-resource sectors, particularly technology companies that have come to our market and are growing. So that's the nature of a stock exchange and market cycles.
Absolutely, and I wanted to talk to you about Canada in particular, which is still home to a majority of the world's major mining companies. The Venture Exchange is home to many of the world's public exploration companies. What about the Venture Exchange creates such an attractive environment for issuers, and maybe some of the history that you're aware of as to how the Venture Exchange became the world's go-to exchange for exploration?
Well, you're right, Colin. The Venture Exchange is, not only the Venture Exchange, the Toronto Stock Exchange and the TSX Venture Exchange are known internationally as the go-to markets for natural resource companies. That's something we're very proud of. We'd like to think that we contribute to that as the exchange operator. But it's really a lot about Canada's history and a lot about the infrastructure and the capital markets in Canada. And by that I mean everything from the securities regulation to the expertise in the legal community, the audit community, the dealers, the investment bankers, and the brokers that really understand this business, and of course to the entrepreneurs in the industry. Canada has an infrastructure or a community that really understands the natural resource sectors and can support them. And that goes back 150 years in our history of operating the capital markets in Canada.
John, before I ask you about how the Venture Exchange has been coping with the current downturn, would you mind touching on a little bit about your history in the sector and how you came to become the president of the Venture Exchange?
Luck. I think I've been in the market since 1981, so it's really all I know how to do. But I love the junior market. It's something that where I feel like whether it's at the exchange or in other parts of the industry, where we can really help contribute to companies that are growing, employ people, and helping create wealth for investors. So I'm really proud of that. I worked in the brokerage industry for most of my career. Before I came to the exchange 11 years ago, I was a director of a Canadian-based brokerage firm, and my main focus was in the investment banking sector, and funded a lot of small cap companies. When I came to the exchange, I was initially focused on the listing side of our business for Western Canada, both in Alberta and British Columbia. And then the opportunity came up 5 years ago to step into this position. And for the first 2 or 3 years, I felt like a genius because the market was helping me. And then the last 3 years, obviously been facing some headwinds, but it's still an interesting job. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Well, this is a question that just kind of popped up in my head. The job that you probably hold at the Venture Exchange and the Venture Exchange as a whole is to provide a good, safe market for these companies to list on, and you really have little control over how the commodities sector and the exploration companies perform on the exchange. So I don't think that that's any type of reflection on you that the markets have turned down over the past couple of years, but you've still managed to keep an exchange that has probably the highest reputation in the world for listing an exploration company.
Well, thank you. You're kind, and of course you're right. I mean, we have no influence on commodity prices or macroeconomic issues, but what we try to do is really focus on things that we have some influence on and try to mitigate a challenging market cycles and do that, whether it's exchange policy, advocacy for improvements in the capital market generally, creating positive awareness of the Canadian capital markets, both domestically and internationally. Those are examples of things that we can do to try to help the market, and that's what we come in every day and try to focus on.
You mentioned new policies and help to issuers. One thing that was done, I believe, probably 18 to 24 months ago was an exemption for special financing prices that allowed issuers to raise below 5 cents with certain special approvals. As an exchange, how do you balance between keeping a rigid set of regulations and then assisting issuers in bad market conditions?
Well, it is exactly that. It's a balance. And so we have to look at what it is we're trying to accomplish with the policies and see where we can be flexible without compromising that market integrity. Because if without it, you lose investor confidence, and you may get short-term wins from easing up the burden on companies, or maybe encouraging a little bit more liquidity or access to capital in the short term. But in the long term, we all end up losing. That's so we're always looking for that Goldilocks solution. Not too rigid and not too inflexible from the company point of view, but maintaining the investor confidence. So we do that by talking to a lot of stakeholders. We literally communicate with our customers and other stakeholders on a daily basis. We have formal advisory committees that we meet with on a regular basis, and just continuing to gather that information and bouncing different scenarios off our stakeholders and seeing where we can help, but not causing long-term harm to the market.
In a discussion I believe I had with Rick Rule, he described that when one participates in a sector that can produce the type of wild gains and losses, such as the resource sector, you're bound to attract some bad apples. And a notorious example of that is Bre-X back in the 90s. But it certainly still happens today. What type of controls does the exchange put in place to protect against these type of promotional ventures without dampening the sector?
Well, I don't. If I may, I'll just go back and not challenge the premise of your question so much, because of course Bre-X was a horrible situation. But since Bre-X, a lot of things have changed in the marketplace. For one, the technology and our ability to vet the backgrounds of market participants, and we've invested heavily in that technology and the resources to be able to do that. So the key thing that you can do to protect the integrity of the market is really understand who's in your market, and also have the authority as an exchange operator to have the final say on who gets to participate in the market and who doesn't. It's not a perfect system, but I think we've come a long way since the mid-90s on really understanding who's in the market and taking very difficult at times but firm positions on who can participate. So that's probably the most important thing that we do to protect market integrity.
Well, John, on that note, thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure all of our listeners will be excited to hear from the president of the Venture Exchange as to what's going on at the exchange. Hopefully, next time we reconnect here, the markets will be back in that blue or green zone on that bulls and bears chart and out of this 3-year rut that we've currently been in.
Well, there's no question that that markets will turn around. I hope that sooner rather than later, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Okay, thanks so much, John.
Think you understand the junior mining sector and you think that the participants in the mining sector, junior mining sector, are good people and kind people, hit the bid.
And the world is always going to need raw materials. It's going to need copper and gold and nickel and so forth.
Totally destabilized. Hey, Troll, did you hear what's going on in Yemen, or are you too stupid?